Yeah, hello everybody again. We stopped last time in the international tax legislation introduction at the point where we were thinking about how can double taxation be dealt with. And naturally, one would first think about a very basic or principle-based solution. That would mean we have two principles which, if they come together, cause double taxation. That's unlimited and limited tax liability. Now one could think about eliminating one of the two kinds of tax liability by a worldwide agreement. For example, one could say, what about abolishing the worldwide income taxation and establishing the principle that everybody only pays on his or her income in the country where it's earned. So your Chilean income would be taxed in Chile, your French income in France, and your German income only in Germany. That would still involve many tax declarations, but it would exclude any conflict, at least in all the simple cases. The other alternative would be to agree on exactly the opposite solution, to say we agree on that every state worldwide practices a system of unlimited tax liability, and that then, as a consequence of that, every other state renounces on the source state taxation. Well, in principle, or in theory, that would be an elegant and simple solution. And now, as it is elegant and simple, we must ask ourselves, why is it not done? And you can always find out in a very simple way how and why things don't happen as you imagine them. Just imagine it would go the way in which you want it to go. What would happen then? And from the consequences which you then see in your thought experiment, you very often can understand why it's not done the way in which you imagined that first. So let's hypothetically just abolish unlimited tax liability. So let's turn to the principle that every income is only taxed in the country where you earned it. So imagine we have no unlimited tax liability anymore, and let's imagine that you have in the inland a tax rate of 60%, and just behind the border, 10 meters behind the border of your own state, there is another state, and they only charge 10%. Yeah? Now, it's a very clear consequence which shows up now. Where would you like to earn your money? Where would you like to invest? Where would you like to take a job? Imagine you have now the choice between a job in the inland and a job in your neighboring country. Naturally, you would prefer probably the neighbor country. If your employer asked you, what about home office? You would say home office. Working at home, that triggers a tax of 60%. It's my own country. Boss, I would like to call you for a favor. That favor would be set up a container for me, an office container just beyond the border. Then I can earn my money abroad. I would get off with 10% taxes. So the consequence would be, if you renounce on worldwide taxation, first consequence, then it can be that your people can earn money abroad for a lower tax level. Second consequence is everybody would want to do exactly this. So they would, third consequence, try to shift every economic activity which they can shift abroad. Your own economy would suffer strongly. Is that effect limited to cases where the tax rate abroad is 10%? Would it also happen with a difference of 60-40? And the answer is naturally yes. 20% more net income. Then you begin to think about that. Would it even happen with 60 and 59.9? And the answer is yes, in certain cases, yes. So you can draw one basic conclusion. You need a worldwide tax liability in order to prevent that your people can invest or earn money abroad for a lower tax level. Otherwise, you damage your own economy. So we can draw a first conclusion. It is absolutely impossible to abolish worldwide income taxation if you do not want to damage your own prosperity. The only exception which we really find in real life is when we look over what countries really do, the 90% or so of them have in reality a worldwide tax base. The ones who have not usually do not have a strong economy which could be damaged by investment abroad. So for them, the problem does not yet exist. It does not mean that they would not change over to a worldwide income taxation once their economy is prospering and big enough so that there could be a shifting of activities abroad. So you can't abolish unlimited tax liability. So you could think about the other theoretical possibility, as we have now proven in theory that every state in the earth has genuine and compelling interest in setting up a worldwide income taxation. We could say everybody will be taxed at home, so everybody is taken care of. And so why can't we then say they are only taxed at home? There is no source country taxation anymore. The problem here is that countries have different tax rates. So it might be if you do not tax people at source, then it might be that two people have a shop at, let's say, Kleve here in Germany, but the one owner lives in Kleve and the other owner lives somewhere in a foreign state where the income tax is very, very low. Let's imagine Monaco. By the way, it's still correct that Monaco does not levy an income tax from private persons, but they have been convinced, compelled, or whatever you call it, by other nations to introduce a kind of income tax on those of their residents who earn much money abroad. So probably in practice, the example would not fully work. But it's imaginable that it could work. For example, there are still some 1 or 2 states worldwide which have an income tax of 0 because they don't have an income tax. So you can replace Monaco in the example by any other state of that list. Now imagine we have these two people both set up a shop at Kleve, Germany. Now Germany, to make the example a bit more drastic, introduces a 90% income tax rate, whereas our competitor living abroad is taxed at home with a 0 rate. So the German makes an annual profit of 100,000, pays a tax of 90,000, has left over for reinvestment 10,000. Needs for living probably 9,000, can reinvest effectively 1,000. So what he can do is to buy some additional toilet paper or to paint the walls. The competitor, also running the same kind of shop in the same extent with the same ideas, equally good, also has the same profit in the beginning, 100,000, pays a tax of 0, can reinvest 100,000. So the competitor can, let's say, enlarge the building, double the space where customers can go shopping, double the amount of stock, and so next year has double the profit, twice the profit. Now again, the German has not very much grown, so earns again 100,000 as in the beginning, pays 90% German taxes, has nothing left over, can perhaps buy some light bulbs to replace some old ones. The competitor just around the street has now made 200,000 profit. 200,000 net are left over due to the different tax rate. So he or she can add up 2 additional floors to the building, double the amount of stock, and now next year have again twice the profit of this year. So what you could see here, if the tax rates are different, then the two people can reinvest at a different speed. The German is rather hampered by the high tax rate, and the foreign competitor can reinvest more of the net income. So the growth of the foreign competitors might be higher, although both compete at the same place under the same non-tax conditions in the same city in the same country. And that would be highly detrimental for your own citizens. And therefore you can draw a conclusion. No state whatsoever will ever allow that a foreign investor, foreign taxpayer, invests in his own country, your country, without paying at least the local tax level. Because otherwise you would give an intolerable advantage in competition to your foreign competitors. So that must be avoided, and that is the reason why no state which acts reasonable will ever renounce unlimited tax liability. So we can draw a very, very simple conclusion. No state will ever abolish unlimited tax liability, otherwise they ruin their own economy. Second, no state will ever abolish limited tax liability, otherwise their own economy will be ruined. Third, if you now have limited and unlimited tax liability in nearly every state of the earth, then it can't work in the long run, because then you have double taxation, and then economy will get ruined in the long run again. So the problem seems to be unsolvable as long as you think in a very theoretical mindset. There are two causes, you can't abolish either of them, so seems to be that the world has no chance. Now, in real life, ladies and gentlemen, very often the solution in such cases is, if you go to a politician, he or she tells you, let's just muddle through. Let's do something which is not a clean solution on the theoretical aspects, but just let's temper a bit around with the clean principles, and then we end up with a tolerable state of results. The idea which nearly all the nations worldwide have is, okay, we still insist in having an unlimited and a limited tax liability, but as the main purpose of unlimited tax liability is, under an economic point of view, to guarantee that investment abroad cannot end up cheaper than at home. We could give something like a discount under unlimited tax liability if you already paid taxes abroad, because our main wish, our main target is only under unlimited tax liability that we guarantee that investing abroad cannot end up cheaper than at home, at least not in a case where it could endanger our economy's prosperity. So you can renounce on a bit of money as long as it's guaranteed that you already paid enough abroad. So the idea is a kind of let's giving discounts in the state of unlimited tax liability. The state of limited tax liability will probably not do that, because they have the strong target aim to guarantee that no foreign investors can ever leave the situation without paying at least their level of tax. And indeed, there has been there has existed already for a long time a general consensus worldwide that relief for double taxation is given usually by the state of unlimited tax liability, so the state where you live, whereas the source state has generally accepted primary right to tax you. So they tax and the others give a discount. Now, as you know from your shopping tours, if the shop owners give you a discount, that can be rather arbitrary. If somebody wants to generously reduce a price claim, they can say, here you get a discount of 10%, here you get one of 30%, you get 40%, depending on their generosity. They just give you as much discount as they think is adequate to keep the shop running. And so it should not surprise you that depending on the situation, the legislators of the world also have different ways how to give a kind of a discount, a reduction or relief of tax for cases where double taxation might come into play. There are 4 different methods available. At least they are generally known. You know, there are 200 countries all over the world, so it might be that in 1 or 2 or perhaps 50 of these countries there might be additional methods which I do not know, but at least from the German system, 4 ideas are well known. These 4 are here on the slide: deduction method, credit method, exemption method, and the so-called lump sum or waiver method, which is put in bracket because that method is or has already been for a long time rather dying out. The cases where this is applied become fewer and fewer and fewer, so it's rather a curiosity which you might know, but in practice it plays nearly no role anymore today, at least not for enterprises. Now, if we keep our comparison with discounts in a shop in mind, it's clear that the shop owner can decide when you get which discount, and so national legislation can also freely decide how these methods, these different kinds to give you a discount, a reduction or relief of tax, when and how they are applied. You must so only learn how the methods work and when a national legislator says you can use this or this method to get some relief for double taxation. So it's clear what we have to do in the next chapters of this part of our lecture. We have to just understand how the different 4 methods work and when which one can be applied. Let's begin with the most simple but also the most unattractive methods of all the 4. That's the deduction method. But before we talk about that, you should also know that there are 2 ways under the technical aspect how a state can establish these discounts or these 4 methods. You can either do it on your own free will, so you just tell your people in your income tax act, if you have income from abroad, you can select before, or you get, depending on the situation, 1, 2, 3, or all the 4 of the 4 methods, depending on how generous one wants to be. So that would have the advantage that for any potential case there has been a precaution, a measure, how double taxation can be relieved. You could also say there are some cases where I want to agree how double taxation is dealt with the other state so that we share the financial consequences of granting relief for double taxation, or that we give a bit more of legal certainty because an international agreement cannot so easily be changed than a merely unilateral rule which just relies on the will of one national legislator. You might even opt to establish a multilateral solution so that 3, 4, or 10 states agree on how double taxation for all cross-border transactions between 1 or 2 or 3 of them are to be relieved. That's just the technical aspect. So we can find indeed double taxation treaties, or we can very often additionally find unilateral solutions where a state says, wherever I did not make a double taxation agreement with another state, at least my taxpayers can claim the one or other following reliefs. Okay. Let's go back to the 4 methods. Here they are again: deduction, credit, exemption, and lump sum method. And let's talk about how they work. So, chapter 2, deduction method, is a thing which we have to look on, and I think that should be discussed in the next small video. so that you can enjoy a small break just now. So keep that in mind and come back in perhaps a few minutes again.